What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 131 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking Blaydes versus Pavlovich. That's UFC Vegas 72.
71.
No, is it?
Yep.
Stop.
No, it's 71.
I don't think so, man.
No, it is.
You're
I'm telling
messing
you.
with me.
No, I'm really not. I mean, I'll check Marcel's page right now, but I'm like 90% positive it's
I don't
Vegas
think it
71.
is. Is it
Oh, yeah,
71?
it is. It is, yeah.
Bro, I cannot. This whole going back to like live cards thing. It's even in the title, 72. Fuck. All right, I'm gonna have to edit that. Okay. Well, UFC Vegas 71. It's an interesting card. I have a couple bets on it. Wags, you mentioned it. So I'll leave it to you. But there are some parallels to last week, I think, here in certain respects. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was chopping up with you a little bit before we started here. I think it's similar in this respect to last week in that, like, keep your cards small. I think there's a lot of volatile spots. I don't think there's just a lot of spots on the card, quite frankly, for betting. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Real quick, we're going to go through last week. Someone mentioned it in the comment section last week that we should do that every week. And they're not wrong. End of the day, we're trying to make ourselves and everybody else money. So, yeah, we're just going to do that going forward. So, real quick, last week was fun. It was fine. I went up 0.56 units, had Holloway. Obviously felt good about that. I think we both felt pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Had Barboza. I don't really even have, like, a very strong opinion. Like, what do you think? Because, like, I've seen people say that he was melting, but also I'm like,
I mean, I had the doesn't go personally. I thought,
yeah.
I mean, I should have went a little heavier, and I know that's a hindsight take, but like, yeah, I had a unit on that at minus 135, and yeah, I think Edson bets were obviously decided. I mean, we kind of talked about that before. That like Billy could have had a good round one, but like,
it's really hard. It's really hard to say. Like, someone on Twitter was like, yeah, well, if Billy gets on top, it's an easy 10-8. And it's like, dude, like, Billy is nothing like the wrestler, some of these guys who have done that. I'm not saying whether my Edson bet was good or bad. I'm just saying I don't think it's as simple to say as, oh, he was going to melt, given what we've seen in the past. But yeah, I mean, that hit. That was cool. Had Dustin Jacoby. Honestly, I don't really know what to make of that as Matt Mirzakhanov at this point. The Tafa fight sort of seems just like an outlier. I don't really, after the output he put on in the Clark fight and in this fight, obviously he cardio death late, but I really didn't expect him to be matching Jacoby in volume here. So that was truly unfortunate. But, that is what it is. I had Robertson, not much to say there. It was a good bet. And I had Lando. I don't really feel like it was a good bet. I don't think it was maybe as bad as it seemed in the moment, just because obviously, that a lot changed off that knockdown in round one. It kind of changed the dynamic of the fight, and that was always going to be his best round. And obviously he came out and won the next round. But, I don't think it certainly wasn't a good bet. I would say I would lean towards it being a bad bet. But yeah, what about you? What did you have?
Okay, I was just going to actually ask you there real quick if your camera was good.
Yeah, my camera's being a bitch.
So, yeah, follow up, I also had Jacoby. Again, yeah, I mean, the volume for Mirzakhanov for me was kind of just surprising. And then, obviously, absolute brain dead in round 3 for Jacoby to try to grapple him after he probably, had him hurt a little bit. But talked about the fight doesn't go the distance. I had a unit on that in the Barboza fight. I had a unit on the under 2.5 in the Royval Nicolau fight, minus 110. And then I feel like, I mean, I want to hear your opinion on this too. I feel like I kind of got robbed on the Phillips plus 3.5 spread at minus 105. I kind of thought, I don't know how you don't give him round 2.
I would say that hits far more often than not. I can see the argument for 30 to 27. I felt like both 2 and 3 were fairly close rounds. You could have scored either way. So it's like one of those things where far more often than not, you're going to get 2 cards or 3 cards, with you there. But yeah, I mean, I thought I could see the justification for it, even if I don't agree with it.
Right. So yeah, so I ended up finishing minus 1.35 units, would have been in the green if that hits. So is what it is.
But we move on this week. Hopefully we both do well. Got a couple bets, so we'll hop right in. We got Dumont Batgerel. He's taking on Brady Heistand. I played Dumont yesterday at minus 133. I think the number is back out to like 155. 155 bet online. You can get 138 if you have bet 365. Looks like Bet Rivers is minus 143. I see the argument for Brady's side, given he's a very aggro grappler, and obviously, that's an elite skill set for MMA, is grappling aggressively, takedown, submission attempts. I just think he's very, very raw. I mean, the kid's very young. He lost the decision to Ricky Tercios. I expected him to be a bit more dominant against Fernie Garcia in his last fight. I just kind of think he's a bit too aggressive with his grappling. And so this is the kind of fight where he basically needs to either finish Bat or just completely smother him to win this fight, in my opinion. And I don't think that's likely. Bat, I think he can get taken down. I think he will get taken down quite a few times here, but he does do a good job. Well, I don't want to say good job. He does an okay job of working up. Obviously, he just did this camp at Fight Ready. It's a very good grappling gym. I don't think he needs to make that many improvements to be able to keep us on the feet for 8 to 10 minutes. And frankly, I kind of think that's all he needs here. He's the much bigger hitter. Brady's got virtually no defense. We've seen this guy wobbled quite frequently throughout his career. It's an interesting fight, but to me, I'm getting a guy with 2x the amount of experience, huge hitter against a guy who basically has to grapple him to death. Like, the way I look at it is Dana can win a fight where he gets taken down 3 to 4 times here, whereas Brady can't win a fight that he doesn't flat out dominate the grappling in here.
Yeah.
So I'm siding on the edge of experience. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I have a small play on Batgerel as well. 1 unit minus 145 for kind of similar point to you alluded to at the end, that I think Brady essentially needs to wet blanket him for 15. I mean, he could finish, but I don't think there's a ton of finishing upside for him. And speaking from a guy who had him against Fernie Garcia, who's just a horrible defensive grappler, again, that was just much sweatier than it really needed to be. So, yeah, I think Batgerel's a solid spot here.
Yeah, moving on, we got Priscilla Cachoeira taking on Corinne Silva. Any strong feelings here?
This is an interesting one for me, and I'm kind of leaning towards a Cachoeira play. I think if the number creeps out a little bit, just because Silva on the feet is not much. Like, decent hitter, decent kicker, but like just looks a bit uncomfortable. In the grappling, like that's kind of like the big like pause for me not playing Cachoeira. Silva will go to the grappling, but like it doesn't seem, she just doesn't seem like a great grappler. But again, does she need to be for Cachoeira? Maybe not. But yeah, I mean, overall, I was looking for a decent under 2.5 just because I do think the finishing upside in the fight is just massive. But it's a pass for me.
I have similar thoughts. I'm probably not going to bet it just because I do feel like Catch's grappling is legit like F territory. Bad. Honestly, it's really quite horrendous. But at the same time, it's like I really want to fade Corinne Silva. Like, I faded her in her debut against Poliana Botelho. Obviously didn't work out. But my view hasn't really changed. I don't think she's a very good striker. I don't think she has very good defense. I don't think she's a very good wrestler. She's got a decent submission game. Catch is the more tested fighter. She's obviously a lot more dangerous on the feet, though. In fairness, she's also a punching bag on the feet who's fairly easy to avoid if you have any slickness whatsoever to your striking game. So, I mean, Catch is the kind of person I'm trying to bet as a dog, but just in general, I hate her game. And to your point, it's like one of these things where like I want to fade Silva, and someone with Catch's experience and finishing upside in WMMA, I would normally be punching that ticket. I just don't think Silva even needs to be that good to get her down. And if she does, I think her submission game's enough to cut through her. Catch gets to plus 200. I might take a poke, but like I'm not trying, I'm not trying to force a play on Catch when there's potentially a plus 500 hole in her game that could get exploited here, So happy to pass it. Moving on. This is a pretty interesting fight. Francis Marshall, William Gomis, both guys making their second UFC fights. I unsuccessfully faded Francis Marshall in his first UFC fight. I still don't. It's kind of funny because I do think Marshall is an interesting prospect. Obviously, he's got very good cardio. He keeps a very high pace. Those are things you love to see. He tries to grapple aggressively. And my biggest issue with Marshall as a fighter is he's got virtually zero defense on the feet. I think as a grappler, while he's okay, I don't think his wrestling is very good. And I mean, on top, he's solid, but I think he's just a very, very raw fighter who has a lot of improvements he needs to make. I'm actually somewhat bullish on his future. I just kind of think he's in the UFC a bit too early. On the Gomis side, though, it's interesting. When I went to tape, I was kind of hoping to come out of it liking Gomis. And I know a few people who do like him, and I can see why. Obviously, he's tall. He's very long. Dimensionally, he's bigger than anyone Marshall's faced in the past. He's pretty strong in the clinch. And so I think, that could give some credence to him potentially having success here with Marshall, maybe keeping him at the end of his range or, being able to outmuscle him in those positions. I just kind of don't see it, though. I don't really think, despite having the sizable height and reach advantage here, I don't think he measures distance very well on the feet. I don't really like his output. And I do think, while there is potentially some equity for him keeping it standing, of the two, I think if one of them is going to dominate the grappling, it's going to be Marshall. I don't have a play here. My pick's Marshall, but the minus 200 I think is probably fine. What do you think, Lags?
Yeah, kind of similarly thoughts here. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, I do think the pace and the pressure of the wrestling of Marshall probably just does end up winning it here. Really, I don't think Gomis, like you talked about the low volume. I also just, the big thing for me, like coming out of tape, in a lot of his fights, just to break pressure, he's just finding the clinch or just trying to like land takedowns, and I just don't think that's free here at all. So, like you mentioned, if anybody's going to have dominant grappling success, it's going to be Marshall. So, yeah, I'm with you as well with Marshall.
Yeah, agreed. And shout out to the Pod and Weave podcast that Trotman's on. Trotman, obviously, super sharp boxing guy. Give it a listen. Give him a follow. Moving on, though, we got Muhammad Usman taking on Junior Tafa. Any thoughts here?
I'll be honest. I think it's just a slop fest. I mean, Tafa, Raw, there's just not a lot of tape. I mean, he's just KOing a bunch of bums, really. I mean, there's some extended fights in the kickboxing, really. I mean, you just have one guy where he's just basically just eating the punches and able to outvolume him for the whole distance of the fight. I think Usman is fine on the feet here. Obviously, low volume nature, not great. And obviously, I think he does have a solid wrestling edge, but it just seems more like brute strength nature. Like, it's not really technical takedowns. So I think it's just a mess of a fight. I think Pick'em seems fine just because of the finishing upside of Tafa and then the wrestling upside for Usman.
Yeah, some weird line movement here. Usman opened minus 150, I believe, and this got bet, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think he opened favorite. Let me pull it up.
See, all I remember is Usman was a massive dog because I know
so he opened minus 120 and then immediately got bet out to about plus 235, and he actually hung out there for a while. I took a lot of Usman out at those big plus numbers, but with that said, I can't really advocate for a play at the current price where it's like pick. I guess my view in terms of the fight is I do sort of favor Usman to win the fight outright. Obviously, Tafa's a glory guy, and I think, that probably means he's getting more respect than he probably deserves in this fight. I watched a fair few of his glory fights when I was taping this, and honestly, he seems just a lot like his brother. He's just a brawler, He would go in there in glory, he'd get a couple bad fighters in a row, he'd completely dumpster those bad fighters, and then promptly get a step up and get mollywopped. And that basically happened every couple fights while he was in glory. He's very, very hittable. He's got a very bad gas tank, but he hits hard and he's willing to scrap. In terms of his MMA tape, there's not a ton out there, but I more or less feel the same way. He obviously is a hard hitter, but I don't think he's technically very sound anywhere. He's very easy to hit. And we saw this guy get grappled pretty hard by a 44-year-old like 2 fights ago. I don't think his grappling is good at all. On the Usman side, it's interesting because if you just went back and looked at his tough fights and the tough finale, you would think this guy doesn't wrestle at all, right? Because he basically didn't. But believe it or not, Muhammad Usman's nickname is the Motor. If you go back, and it's been the Motor because of how aggressively he wrestled and how good his cardio was. If you go back and watch his pre-tough fights, the guy wrestled pretty much all the time. And that's kind of the crux of why I played him here. Maybe he won't wrestle, but I have seen him dominate guys on the mat who are commensurate grapplers to Tafa. I think. I don't think Usman's like some crazy good grappler, but again, when you're talking about the level difference here, it's just gigantic. It's like you're taking on like a D grappler with a C grappler, and the C grappler should squish him if he goes for it. But even if they stand, I don't like Usman striking, but he's got a decent jab. He's got a good counter check left hook. That's basically all he has is like that and a blitz. But like given Tafa's game and how open he is to hit, I kind of feel like that could work even standing here. Plus, as I mentioned, Tafa's cardio is quite poor and Usman's for heavyweight is pretty good. So I kind of think Tafa's got to blast him early. Otherwise, this likely goes downhill. And if Usman just comes out and dives on legs, I think he's going to own him. So the pick's Usman. Again, it's hard for me to advocate to play at minus 110 to your point, Lags. I kind of think it's a mess. And so it's like, at this point, do you really want to be betting on a couple of fatties at pick.
Like I get making the argument at pick because it's like on the feet, like we talked on, like I think it's commensurately even-ish. Like obviously maybe more finishing upside on the top side, and then the grappling, it's potentially a dumpster. So
yeah, and I mean Usman's got 2.5 times the MMA fights that Tafa does. Usman's got 10 fights, right. Tafa's 4, and Tafa and Usman 4.
And the 4 fights are bums too. So.
Yeah, well that's the thing. For a guy who is making his, I guess technically second UFC fight, Usman's actually fought decent competition. He fought Don'Tale Mayes to a decision regionally. He fought Brandon Sales. He obviously beat Justin Paga in his last fight. He fought a couple of okay guys, nothing special on Tough. But I mean, the difference in competition is, as you said, massive here. So yeah. I mean, if you feel the need to gamble, I would bet Usman. But I mean, I'm not arguing.
We got fights every week, people.
We do have fights every week. We have a lot of fights this week. We have Bellator also. Yeah. Coming up, we got Carol Rosa. Whether or not I want to make a splash on.
I lose you there, John. I lose you there. You good? Yep. Good now. Yeah, you froze for a while there.
Okay. All right. Could you hear what I was saying when I froze? Okay. Can you hear me now, though?
Yes.
All right. Good. I've been debating whether or not to make a play on Rosa. I really don't like Norma Dumont. It's funny because I'm a stats guy and her striking metrics check out like huge. But you watch her fights, man, and I really just do not trust her. I mean, the woman struggles to make weight. She's a complete gas bag. Obviously, she hits hard, and she's a decent grappler. But, like, man, this woman got out-grappled by Macy Chiasson. It's like, so even though Rosa's grappling hole has seemed big at times, it's like, is she really, like, is Dumont really that good of a grappler? She couldn't take down Megan Anderson. She got out-grappled by Macy Chiasson. I'm kind of skeptical, and if they stay standing, I think Rosa's output and her cardio is a lot more reliable than anything Dumont's going to bring to the table. With the pace Rosa pushes, we could see Dumont cave pretty hard here if she tries to match it. With that said, I mean, Dumont does hit hard, and she's very fast. Like, I don't think she's unskilled at all, and obviously there are the grappling concerns, which makes it dicey at pick, especially with Rosa moving up to 45. Kind of scares me a bit too. So I'm still a bit torn on what to do. I'm probably going to pass it. If it gets out to like plus 125, I might take a small poke on it, maybe like a half unit. But yeah, picks Rosa, but I'm torn. What do you think?
I think it's really the crux of the fight for me is the 145 move up because like on the feet, like Rosa's volume, I think is obviously much, much higher than Dumont's. Dumont could land some big punches here and there, but like Rosa in terms of a striker, I think is much better. But like you touched on a little bit in the grappling, at least for me, I think if either of these girls land a takedown, it could be a round. Yes. So like it's really dicey with that. And again, like with the strength, physicality nature, in women's MMA, we talk about it. Skills don't matter as much. The physicality advantages and this, that, they help level the playing fields of the skill sometimes. So yeah, I think this is largely a close fight, and I think the margins are close, and that's why I think you're seeing it as a pick 'em as well.
Well, I'll keep it with you here. We got Montel Jackson. I don't know why the fuck they're making this fight, if I'm being honest. Like, why are they doing this to Hani Yahya? Guy's a legend, and he's getting shoved in there with a giant at 135. What are your thoughts?
I don't have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I feel like people are rushing to like lay Montel finishing Ronnie, and I just don't think that's just a great proposition. I know the under 2.5 is like minus 185. I don't know, just not a ton of thoughts really. I don't see like Yahya having a ton of success, but it's also like, am I trying to lay like Montel inside the distance? Like, do I think he finishes at high clip? No, not really.
Yeah, this is like one of those fights similar to last week, one of those dogs that I think is potentially live, but I'm not sure. I want to take a poke at. And, when I was looking at it, I was kind of hoping we'd get like a Yahya sub, like plus 1,400 or something, given the line, but it's plus 650.
It's like by the way, it's 9-1 on DraftKings.
That's not horrible. It's just like one of those things where it's like when it's implied is under 20%, I really want like a huge number if I'm going to take a prop on it, because like I'll be fucking sick if he just rides his back out for 2 rounds, But with that said, look, I mean, Montel is obviously much more physically capable than Hani is. This is a guy who was on or tried to make the Olympic team for wrestling. He's a decent Greco wrestler. He's obviously gigantic. He's super long. He hits very, very hard. But I don't know, man. Montel rubs me the wrong way. I just, there's something about his game I can't put my finger on. It's like he refuses to really enforce it. Like he kind of lets his opponents dictate what's going to happen in the fight. And it's cost him quite a bit. Obviously lost to Ricky Simone, and that's aged very well. But like he lost to Brett Johns, but just by Johns basically attempting a double leg over and over again. The Julio Arce fight. I mean, Julio's a good fighter, but he had so much length and size on him, and he found a way to make that a very, very close fight. I just don't really trust Montel. I mean, this is a guy who fought JP Blaydes. Now, that is a layup. JP Blaydes is not UFC level, and managed to get taken down, get his back taken, and get mounted in that fight. And now he's fighting a guy like Hani, who's got about 3x the experience of him. The guy is a world-class jiu-jitsu practitioner. And I know everybody talks about it. It's almost like a meme at this point. Like Montel's hands are so big, it's impossible to choke him out. It's very different trying to hold Brett Johns' hand when he's on your back and having a guy like Hani Yahya on your back. It's just it's a different caliber of jiu-jitsu that he's going to be dealing with here. And so I look at it and I'm like, fuck, like I'm really, plus 450 seems like a huge number on Hani. But at the same time, dude, I mean, Montel's like, he's in his prime. This guy is in incredible shape. Ronnie's really, if he's going to go for it, only has 2 yards of gas. I don't know, man. I'm probably not going to do it. But I really feel like there is some scope for Ronnie potentially getting him down, getting on top of him, and getting a dominant position early in this fight. It's just that if that happens and he doesn't get him out of there, I kind of think he probably gets finished. But I don't know. I lean Ronnie. The pick is Montel, but at least for now, it's a pass for me. Moving on, Ricky Glenn, Christos Giagos. This is kind of an interesting one. I didn't have any interest in it. The line's south of -150 now in some places. I'm starting to get some interest in it. I've always been kind of a pro Giagos guy. I think I think some of his parts are better than the whole. The whole has not proven to be that good. But look, the guy bangs. He throws heat on the feet. He's obviously a pretty good wrestler. If he gets on top of you, he's decent. The problem with Christos is he just goes hard as hell right out the gate, and if he doesn't get you out of there or can't just top time you, he tends to gas out and get finished or lose. I would say the biggest advantage I'd give him in the fight here are that his losses are great. The unfortunate thing for him is his wins are as bad as his losses are good. The guy just hasn't beaten many quality fighters in the UFC. And Ricky Glenn, look, I said this a couple weeks ago about somebody, I can't remember who, but Ricky Glenn's like oatmeal. He's a reliable fighter. You know what you're getting. There's nothing flashy about him. But he's a quality.
Was it last? I could have sworn it was last week because I was going to compare it to the Bill Algeo fight. Was it Algeo? I thought you said
it could be.
I'll look. I'll look while you're talking.
But Glenn is, yeah. I mean, he brings a solid toolkit to the table. He's a decent defensive grappler. I kind of have a feeling the market might have this price so low because of how bad Glenn looked against Grant Dawson, but the truth is the difference in grappling between Grant Dawson and Christos Giagos is just enormous. Grant Dawson's a serious wrestler. He's a black belt. He's got vicious ground and pound. Ricky Glenn won a decision against Dennis Bermudez in his heyday, and Dennis Bermudez is a better wrestler than Christos Giagos. He's got better cardio than Christos Giagos. I just think Glenn probably should be fine here. Maybe he struggles early, but like he's the better striker. I guess there's some argument that you should wait and look to play the Giagos side live, but I also kind of think Glenn hits hard enough that he could hurt Giagos.
You mean the Glenn side live? You mean
the Glenn side live? Yeah, my apologies. Yeah. Yep. I think that you could make that argument, but it's getting to the point where -148. It's like I feel like Glenn should be about -200 here. I think there's a good argument for that, and it's getting to the point where I might enter pre. What do you think, Lags?
So to talk about the oatmeal comment, first of all, if it's not Bill Algeo, the only other one I could think of would be GM3, which was 2 weeks ago when we talked about that. But yeah, no, I kind of similarly to you. I equate this kind of to last week's fight with Algeo and Brown, where it's like, -200, Glenn, you're not loving that, but it's like, because he's probably not going to have a good round 1, but 2 and 3, he's likely going to have a great showing. So again, -150 Glenn now. I think it's a good spot.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yep.
Moving on,
Just kind of waiting on the line because it's just kind of been one way.
It's coming down.
Really.
People are betting the Giagos side, so if they keep betting it, I will enter on Glenn here. He's definitely the pick. Moving on, what are your thoughts here? Matt Semelsberger, Jeremiah Wells.
Another weird one because, like, I think Wells could have some round one success, landing takedowns, could even knock out Semelsberger, but like, how much extended success could he have? Not quite sure. I think the under's good potentially, but again, I don't know. It's just for me, one, I'm not trying to dive in the cookie jar because I think Wells could have some just top time success. So at -135, don't love it, but like if there was any play to be made on the fight, I think the under is probably good.
Yeah, I agree. I strongly considered a Semelsberger play earlier in the week just because, to your point, I think Semelsberger is the better striker personally by a decent margin. I think his output's more reliable. I think his cardio is much more reliable than Wells is. Obviously, there's a massive power threat from Wells, especially early in the fight where he could get him out of there. But Semelsberger, to me, he seems fucking durable, man. But at the same time, you touched on it a little bit. I don't think Jeremiah Wells is an elite wrestler, but he is a very good grappler. And he will push it. He'll push to the body lock. And if he gets on top of Semelsberger, it could be very, very bad news. I really didn't like what I saw from Semelsberger on bottom against AJ Fletcher. It was 2 fights ago. It looked pretty dicey to me, and that is a huge concern because I rate Wells' top game and just jiu-jitsu in general considerably higher than I rate AJ Fletcher's. So it's like I think Semelsberger wins the minutes on the feet, but there's finishing equity there for Wells. And I think if Semelsberger ends up on bottom, he's in big trouble. So it's kind of hard for me to back him here. I guess I'll pick Semelsberger to win the fight here. I don't feel great about it, though. I'm kind of happy to sit this one out and watch. Evens feels fine to me. Moving on. Interesting fight. Yasmin Lucindo taking on Brogan Walker. This is another one similar to the Ronnie fight where it's like there's a part of me that wants to pull the trigger on Walker here. It's funny because everybody is like if you go scroll through Twitter or listen to anybody else's podcast this week, people are talking up Yasmin Lucindo like she is a lock to win a title like in the future. And I just don't really know where it's coming from. Now, I'm not
going to fight, really.
Right, but even that fight,
yeah.
I'm not going to say it wasn't an impressive performance, especially given the pace we've seen Uregi be able to keep since that fight. But at the same time, I felt like her game is very basic. It's very like John Lineker-esque. It's just like a lot of hooks like coming forward at you and just biting down and banging with you. But she's there to get hit. In the grappling, she grappled a lot regionally, but I don't really rate her wrestling. Like, I don't think she's very physical from those clinch positions that she tries to get you down from. And I don't think her jiu-jitsu is very good. I mean, she's been submitted 3 times regionally too. I mean, to back that up. And so she's fighting Brogan Walker and she's being priced -350. Look, I without seeing Walker's last fight, I would have bet her here in a second. The funny thing is, Walker's last fight was enough. I bet her in that fight, and she looked so bad against Miller that I was like, man, I might just be wrong about Juliana Miller. She's probably going to dumpster Veronica Macedo instead of taking a dog shot there. Nope, turned out I was exactly right about what Juliana Miller is as a fighter. She just ripped through Brogan Walker. So it's like that fight is hugely concerning for me on the Walker side. But like I think Walker, she's probably going to be competitive on the feet here with Lucindo. Maybe. Again, she looks so bad. She looks so bad against Miller that it like really just kind of makes me kind of check my priors when it comes to the Walker side. But I do think there's some scope for this fight being competitive. Like I really would be surprised if Lucindo out-grappled Walker in the manner that Miller did. Like Miller's much bigger than Lucindo is. She's a better wrestler. I mean, she's fought some tough women, man. I mean, she beat Laura Gallardo and Hannah Guy, both of whom can grapple a little bit on tough. She obviously fought Pearl Gonzalez and Erin Blanchfield. She beat Miranda Maverick. Like, to me, this is definitely not the best opponent Brogan Walker has faced in her career. But like I said, it's a dicey one, and it's one I'm not super confident in. So, like, I'm probably going to pass it. But I kind of think Walker is the side here. And Serenity mentioned in the chat Lucindo's super young, and that is true, and I expect her game to round out a bit. My point is more, I don't see a lot from her game now that I would say is a plus UFC skill set. What do you think, Lags?
I just don't think Brogan Walker is very good at all, really. Like, I can't really point to anything where I'm like, oh, yeah, she's like a decent. Like, I think she's like an average to below average striker. And like, in terms of the grappling, I don't think she's a good defensive grappler at all. So, I mean, while the line might be blown out a bit, I do think that Lucinda should be a pretty decent sized favorite. Not a ton to add to that. I think her by decision is probably the most likely outcome. I don't see her finishing at a hugely high clip.
Yeah, I agree with that. And someone, I think it was Pepe, he's in the chat. He actually mentioned something. If you do want to play Walker earlier in the week, that I think is a decent shout. Walker by submission is a pretty fucking huge price, if I'm not mistaken. It's like plus 1,800, which I think is like an interesting, if you want to take a poke here, I think that's pretty interesting. But yeah, moving on, I'll keep it with you here. Bobby Green, Jared Gordon. I know you got some action here. What are your thoughts?
And listen, I know every Bobby Green fight week, people will tell you don't parlay at Bobby Green. But listen, I'm going to do it. It is what it is. And I honestly, though, in all seriousness, though, I think Bobby Green is in a great spot here against Jared Gordon. Like the volume on the feet, and I just don't think Jared's going to have hardly any wrestling success. I know people will want to be like, oh, just massive Bobby money line, just playing by decision. I think he could finish Jared just how fast he is. The dude's a fucking great boxer. I think just people underrate him or underestimate him just because of like the shenanigans like in the octagon. But dude's an elite fighter.
Yeah, I agree with you. I haven't bet him. If we get some reverse line movement and he gets down to like the minus 220 range, I might though. And I do agree with you. Like obviously you always have and the last time I laid minus 200 against Bobby Green was the Thiago Moises fight, and I wanted to put a bullet in my head.
Same. Right. But I felt like we were kind of robbed in that spot. I mean, I know it was close, but yeah. Right.
So, but I do feel similarly to you here. The thing for me is like the speed difference between, like, I love Jared Gordon. He's my boy. I max bet him against Patty. That hurt. But I love Jared Gordon's game because everybody just like kind of like dismisses him because he's been knocked out a few times, but he keeps a high pace. He attempts a lot of takedowns, things that I want to see from guys I'm betting. The thing is, he is excellent at betting against guys that aren't great athletes. Like Danny Chavez, I bet Jared Gordon is a dog against. I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like these are the kind of guys he dumpsters. I bet him against Patty, not a great athlete. Now he's fighting Bobby, though, who's an excellent defensive grappler. And the athleticism gap here is enormous. You know, Bobby's hands are just so much faster than Jared's. His defense is so much better. He's going to counter him all day long here. I actually think, look, Jared could land a couple takedowns, but I actually think there's some equity for Bobby landing takedowns himself here. The truth of the matter is, Bobby getting priced the way Patty got priced against Gordon is kind of crazy. Granted, that line was ridiculous, and that's even more obvious after the fact. But I think Bobby's got him covered in pretty much all departments in this fight. But again, I'm not really trying to lay minus 255 on a striker. But if it gets down and the under 70% implied, like minus 220, I'll take the shot. I do like Bobby, though. He's the pick. Obviously, he's a boy. He's the Club and Sub podcast, Bobby Green's biggest fans. So
facts.
More Bobby.
Yeah, listen, even though Bobby could 100% make this a close fight in the, like, talking about like another fight, Bobby Patty would be a great fight. Like, even though if it goes this, it's obviously you could pull shenanigans and that, but like that would be great.
I would die for Bobby Patty. That is the fight that I need in my fucking life. You know,
yeah, and it's an entertaining fight. Imagine the press conference.
Dude, make it a co-main event on a pay-per-view. Yeah, the press conference
in London.
Dude, people would be fucking hyped for Bobby Green and Patty Pimblett, man. And then Bobby would just disappoint us and we got to find his way into a Dars 20 seconds into the fight. That would be inevitably how that ends. But I would love that. Moving on here, we got Brad Tavares taking on Bruno Silva. Lags, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Not so much of a hot take in the fight, but I just more so just think the fight just goes late. I just don't think Silva. I mean, we're pricing basically the finishing equity in this fight at like 50%, with the under being, minus 120. So I played the over at plus 105. I mean, I think Tavares is just a solid top 20-ish guy in general. I know he's been declining this and that, but like, I think he can outwork Silva, better cardio. I think it should be a good spot for him. I just think the money line's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I like the over as well. Honestly, like initially I was kind of interested in betting the Brad side before I looked at it. But you know what's funny? Like Brad was ranked for a while, and I think it's given people a false sense of what he brings to the table. Unfortunately for Brad, I don't think his game for MMA, modern MMA, is just that good. It's pretty mid, if I'm being honest. Like, he's a medium tempo kickboxer with not a lot of power who can get cracked. That's not really ideal, and he doesn't wrestle. He's an elite defensive wrestler, but he never offensively wrestles. So, I mean, that's not really a guy I want to back at juice. But what I will say in the context of this fight is Bruno Silva brings no volume to the table at all. I don't rate Bruno Silva. I think if Brad is smart, he will get his singlet on and wrestle here, because I'm pretty sure he could do it to Bruno all day long. But he never does that, so I don't trust him to do that. But I think they're going to kickbox. I lean Brad's like semi-significantly here, but I'm expecting a pretty low-tempo fight. Brad's low volume generally, unless you really force a pace on him, and Bruno forces a pace on nobody. So, yeah, Bruno could crack him and KO him. I think that's most of the equity, but like, I don't think you can really put Bruno KO past like 25% here. And I don't think you can put Tavares KO past 15% really. And so, like, I kind of think it's minus 150 to go the distance. I like the plus 105 over 2.5. I'm with you. Brad's the pick, but again, Brad's game is negative enough for modern MMA that I don't really want to lay juice with him. Moving on, though, we got the main event. We got Sergey Pavlovich taking on Curtis Blaydes. Blaydes a minus 175 favorite here. I love Curtis here. I have 3 units on him at between minus 160 and minus 170. I think the current price is good. I think there's a lot of people who think that, you know, Pav touches this guy once and he goes out. And I just don't think there's a lot to back that up. They're going to point to the Derek Lewis fight. Wow, the guy changed levels into an uppercut. Okay, that knocks out pretty much anybody. And then the 2 Francis fights, he had a doctor stoppage in the first one. He ate plenty of hammers. And in the second one, he was still getting back up when they stopped the fight. Like, I actually think his chin is pretty good. And even on a technical level, Pav likes to blitz guys and just throw recklessly. I think Blaydes has a lot of tools standing here to actually deny that. The guy throws a jab and throws low kicks, something none of the guys who have fought Pavlovich in the UFC do. I think Pavlovich is going to find it really hard to get into brawling distance when he's just getting a jab pumped in his face. I actually think Blaydes is the better striker by like a semi-significant margin. I don't want him to strike. Let me be clear. I do not want him to strike. But I do think he's the better striker. I think he's likely the more durable fighter. I know he's got better cardio. And in the grappling, look, yeah, Pav's gotten up from takedowns regionally against some bums, but like the only things we saw in the UFC was the Overeem fight. And like Overeem got on top of him. He basically looked like a fish on bottom. He ate 1 flush ground strike and literally quit. He basically just shelled up. He ate 1 round strike and basically just shelled up and quit in that fight. Curtis Blaydes can take Pavlovich down. He should change levels 30 seconds into this fight if he's intelligent. I think if he does take the path of least resistance here, he's going to dominate Pavlovich. Maybe finish him early, maybe just gas him out and finish him in round 2 or round 3. But honestly, I think Curtis is better at every aspect of MMA. I think he's got a big durability edge, a big cardio edge, a big technical edge, and a big grappling edge. Like, people forget, but like Blaydes was getting lined at like minus 400 against guys like Jairzinho Rosenstruck, and I felt like Rosenstruck had a lot more tools to potentially punish Blaydes with his counter striking than Pavlovich does. Like, a guy who's just going to blast forward at Blaydes and swing wild hooks, he can handle that all day. I mean, even the 20 seconds the Aspinall fight landed, look at how calm he hangs in the pocket there. Like, yes, I don't think that was indicative of that fight, but Pavlovich hasn't faced anybody like that. Lewis basically quit right away. Ty, as soon as Pavlovich came forward, just started swinging wild hooks as well and got chinned. Maurice Green, who cares? Marcelo Golm, who cares? Yeah, I think Blaydes should be in the minus 250 area here, maybe even north of that. He could get clipped. It could happen, but I really think Curtis should take care of business here. Lags, what do you think?
So to touch from a side perspective first, I kind of, again, similarly agree. I think if Pavlovich isn't knocking him out in like the first minute, 2 minutes, like Blaydes is going to absolutely dumpster him in this fight. Wrestling, the cardio. There's just so many unknowns. So like people playing like Pavlovich money line, like plus 140, like I don't really get what we're doing here. I mean, maybe round 1 KO if you want to have that. I really don't get it. There's just a lot of unknowns. You're just kind of hoping like, maybe he knocks him out. Like, what if he doesn't knock him out round 1? Oh, maybe not round 2. Okay, so you're just playing the uncertainty. But where I'm trying to get at is here. I think the under 2.5 parlayed up with Bobby Green, like I touched on earlier, minus 116.
On the under 2.5.
No, sorry. The under parlayed with Bobby.
Okay.
It's minus 300.
I was like, I'll max bet minus 160.
No, the under 2.5 is minus 300. But yeah, no, I think Blaydes finishes him from on top. And if talking about the same game parlay options, if people don't love like the Curtis Blaydes minus 170, Curtis Blaydes and the over, it's 119.5 seconds, so 2 minutes is minus 120.
Serenity asked, I think it was bad. He was having issues taking Rosenstruck down. I mean, not really. Rosenstruck's a big guy. I mean, he went, God went 2 for 14 trying to take Rosenstruck down. Overeem had a pretty hard time taking him down. He's a kind of a tough guy to deal with in the clinch. So not really. But I think that's an interesting parallel, though. Like I said, Rosenstruck's counterpuncher, and Pavlovich is not. Like, I kind of think if he gets Pavlovich against the fence, there's not going to be a lot of offense coming back at him, you know? So yeah. So I work Curtis for me. Is your pick going to be Blaydes?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that'll do it, guys. Obviously, there's a big Bellator. There's 2 Bellator cards this weekend. I think I'm going to go live Friday morning and talk about it. I'll see if I can get somebody come on. Lags, if you want to tape the cards, you're welcome to join me.
I'll at least be there. I'll at least be there in support.
All right, fair enough. So yeah, so I'll put a link out there for that. But yeah, Friday morning, 9 or 10 a.m. I'm going to go live. I'll go through both Bellator cards. Maybe not the fights I don't care about, but fights I think are interesting and whatnot. I have a decent amount of action on it. But yeah.
Do you have any hot takes on the boxing?
Oh,
Garcia,
Davis and
Davis.
Garcia. I mean, I like Ryan and I hate Gervonta Davis, so go Ryan, but I don't feel strongly about. I mean, I'll probably have some DJ action on Ryan. Do you have any take on it?
No. I have no interest. I mean, I would not no interest. I will be watching the fight, but like from a betting, no, I don't have any strong takes.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, guys. So I mean, that's gonna do it. Please, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. If you want to follow us on Twitter, I'm at MMA Fox. Lags is at Danny_Lags. Again, we're always here to shout out. If you want to message us, sometimes now with this new Twitter feature where it have message requests, I miss these messages a lot of the times, but I'll always find them eventually and shout you back out. Always happy to talk fights, whatever you want to do. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Hopefully you're with us. If not, still good luck anyway. At least one of us will cash then. Take it easy. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.